Well, as most of you know by now, our temple and Fairmont Temple are currently engaged in serious and ongoing discussions about how to bring our two congregations closer together, and to do so through more collaborations, like the wonderful Slichot service we shared last Saturday night. And so at this pivotal moment in our history, I want to reflect with you about why these discussions began, what they have covered, and what may lie ahead, and why I firmly believe that having our congregations draw closer together, up to and including a full merger, is an important and hopeful goal of this entire process. Now, these discussions began informally last January, continued under the direction of facilitators during the summer, and have arrived at a substantial, though still preliminary, understanding that is described in the email communication you received just a few days ago. A preliminary understanding in which a full merger, though not yet by any means a certitude, has become an increasingly likely outcome. Now, what is it that has driven these conversations? They have been driven by two factors. The first, need, and the second, opportunity. First, the need emerges from an indisputable reality. What is this reality? It is that synagogues, as well as churches and religious institutions generally, have in recent years experienced a worrisome decline in membership and in participation. COVID has significantly contributed to this trend, but so have other non-COVID factors. For example, the intensification of secularism in our culture, the growing suspicion of traditional institutions, the disinclination to come to a central building, thus loosening the ties that a common gathering spot can strengthen. Then there is the rise of alternative and non-traditional forms of religious expression, the many distractions of social media, and the high cost of membership. These cultural and economic realities, and they are accelerating and they are deepening, provide a powerful picture of both the disturbing reality we face and its deep impact on traditional institutions like the temple. When I joined the temple as one of your rabbis back in 1993, we had a membership that numbered some 1,850 families. Today we just have under 1,050, a steep decline. And despite current heroic efforts by our staff to reach out for and to welcome new members, chances are strong that this decline in numbers will only increase in the years ahead. And Fairmont Temple has experienced the same decline and for the same reasons. And so the first driver behind our current conversations is need. The need for both temples to find ways to counteract the corrosive forces, to find ways to increase our numbers, and then find the means through which to strengthen our viability and our impact. Confronting the need has been one of the prominent themes of our discussions. Yet, though the crisis is real and we can't avoid it, there is another factor that we are seriously considering, and that is opportunity. Opportunity to see how combining our human and economic resources may allow us to fashion a more robust, more imaginative, and more vibrant Jewish experience for our children, for our families, for our congregants of all ages. Perhaps even to have an impact on the larger Cleveland Jewish community, and even on the national Jewish community. An opportunity to become a vanguard congregation, to lead American Jewry toward a revival that is profoundly responsive to the challenges of the day and in ways that can make a decisive difference. The opportunity statement you received a couple of days ago points in evocative language to this kind of future. We can become, and now I'm going to quote, an innovative multi-generational congregation that ignites engagement through robust offerings as a vibrant spiritual community, and which promises to expand meaningful worship experiences that inspire community members who choose Reform Judaism as a part of their Jewish journey, along with a promise to honor our historical legacy, both congregations, as two of America's premier congregations. Indeed, this is a powerful and bracing clarion call for the future, a real opportunity at a most challenging time. And so this combination of obvious need and visionary opportunity has pointed us to an optimistic future. I, for one, and let me be straightforward about this, embrace the prospect of increasing collaboration up to and including a full merger. Think of what we can accomplish if and when our two legacy congregations become one. However, many of you, like those of many of us in our discussions, have qualms and concerns and questions about all this. Questions that we must take seriously. What about our nearly 175-year history as a congregation? What will happen to the congregation I grew up in, that I am comfortable in, that my children have been educated and socialized in? Will we lose our history in this blend of congregations? What about the monetary contributions that so many of you generously made to our recent Temple Tomorrow campaign? Contributions earmarked by you for specific programs, specific spaces, specific special funds. Will all this disappear? What about the names of donors on walls and on entrances? What about the calendaring of bar and bat mitzvah ceremonies, when greater numbers may lead to greater calendaring problems? What about clergy and other staff? Will we need the large staff that merely combining two congregations will lead us to? What about the subtle yet real and significant differences in our cultures? How will we manage these? All of these are important questions, questions which we must consider and with which we must deal. How much continuity and how much change? How much legacy and how much innovation? And at what pace? These questions open up, it seems to me, the issue of tradition and how thinking about the dynamics of tradition might help us to understand our goals and our processes. Therefore, I want to spend a few moments now thinking about the important features of tradition from a Jewish point of view. Let's begin with the famous opening passage from a 3rd century ethical treatise known as the Pirkei Avot, the ethics, better translated, chapters of the ancestors. Here it is. Moses received Torah on Mount Sinai and passed it on to Joshua, who then passed it on to the elders to the prophets, and the prophets gave it to the men of the great assembly. This is what we call in Hebrew a shalshelet hakabbalah, a chain of tradition. What kind of a chain is it? Well, let's focus for a moment on that little word it, which our translation of the Pirkei Avot passage repeats 3 times. Let me read it again, emphasizing the word it. Moses received Torah on Mount Sinai and passed it on to Joshua, who then passed it on to the elders to the prophets, and the prophets gave it over to the men of the great assembly. The word it, I think you'll agree, seems to refer to the same entity. The same entity in each of its iterations. And that entity is Torah. Torah, which is passed down from generation to generation without changing any of it. It. This is what I call the link chain idea of tradition. Think of a link chain, one after another. Each link exactly the same as the previous link. Moreover, this theory of tradition implies an obligation to each subsequent link, each subsequent generation. And that obligation is to teach and to transmit to the next generation exactly what it received from the past. Change nothing. The past alone rules, and the tradition is a static entity, a once and for all set of ideas and norms which contains all the truth anyone down through the generations will need. Because it is so straightforward and so easy to grasp and apply, this idea of tradition has great appeal. But the very continuation of this passage shows its limitations. And I quote, "The men of the great assembly would always say 3 things. Be cautious in judgment, establish many pupils, and make a fence around the Torah," end quote. Now, none of these ideas is a part of the original Torah. If not, where did they come from? And the answer is from the needs of new times and the opportunities that new times provide. Need and opportunity. And so this concluding section of our passage opens up yet a second idea, a second imperative. We must take seriously what we are facing today. And so here, the vibrant transmission of a tradition requires 2 things: fidelity to the wisdom of the past, along with responsiveness to the challenges and opportunities of the present. Preserve and renovate. A tradition in this form is dynamic and not static. It changes. It must change. Let me pose this as a paradox. To preserve the past, we must change it in the present. We change in order to preserve. The old can remain alive only through the new. Here's an example. During the period of the Roman wars in the last century of in the last years of the 1st century of the Common Era, many Jewish groups contending with the vast Roman Empire. Many Jewish groups had many different ways of dealing with this crisis. Some were conservative and stuck with the old ways. Some were innovative and recognized that the crisis at hand required new ways of thinking and acting. And it was the Pharisees who saw the need and saw the opportunity. And so they addressed the Romans as follows: "We will not continue to fight you. Give us Yavna, a place where we can study Torah and live our lives by our own norms." That is, the Pharisees recognized that the old Judaism, the Judaism featuring a temple and sacrifices and kings and priests and prophets, that the old Judaism was gone. There was a need for innovation and change. Yet they also saw that the innovations and changes could still embrace and represent the essence of the past. That the study of Torah could be seen as a form of worship. That the regular times for sacrifices could be replaced by the regular times set for prayer. That the observance of the mitzvot could be seen as a way of being faithful to God. Millennial norms, new vehicles. That the rabbinic and lay leadership could replace the sovereignty of the priesthood. And so by responding boldly to the present, the Pharisees saved Judaism. We must be like the Pharisees. We must recognize the need for bold steps in perilous times, the need to adjust our paradigm to save the essence of our tradition for the sake of a promising future. Indeed, only a lean to the future can preserve what is precious from the past. A merger will require, from both our temple and from Fairmont Temple, compromises and changes. We will both need to let go of some things that have long been familiar to us. We will have new clergy, and Fairmont will have a new building. Both congregations will need to acknowledge and accept some of the ways of the other. The two cultures cultivated by each congregation for almost 200 years will have to adapt and adjust to each other. And what about the rate of change? Indeed, some of the changes that will be necessary can happen quickly, but the blending of two cultures, two patterns of worship, our traditions of leadership, and our fundamental priorities, all of this will of necessity require a period of gradual transition and therefore patience. But if the goal is important, and I believe it is, then the means, purposeful, alert, patient, will also be important. Yet beyond everything else, the goal will lead us to our two strong, committed, but imperiled synagogue communities to become one vibrant, forward-looking, and optimistic congregation, working together as one to accomplish the goals of the Pharisees, to survive and to thrive in a new day and under new circumstances, to adapt to the imperatives of the moment in order to preserve the eternal values and norms of the past, and to become a blessing to ourselves and to our community now and long into the future.